He wants some new immigration landmark bill, and it takes forever because it has to go through all these branches and make sure it's constitutional. And they know that. They knew it was BS in the first place. Trump knew that as well, came in and did what he had to do to close the border. They just needed enforcement. They just need to enforce the law. So, I mean, that alone stopped the bleeding, right? Now it's about getting rid of much of the infection, right? And the infection has been that for years, actually decades, illegal immigration has been slowly entering our society, infecting many sectors of our economy.
I always found when I went to Boston, the Irish guys there, the American Irish guys there, are more patriotic Irish. My dad's Irish.
Okay.
He lives in Ireland. So anyway, welcome to London, man.
Thank you.
How's your trip been?
It's been good, man. It's been good. I was on the Lotus Eaters?
Oh yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah, a couple days ago. And meeting friends and...
Been out to eat anywhere good?
I'm staying in Bromley.
Oh, okay.
So, excuse me. Good thing I had the water here. I've stayed in in Bromley and gone to different nice restaurants in that area.
Well, it's good to talk to you, man. We linked up on Twitter a while back.
Yeah.
I found your Twitter very interesting. I find the things you talk about very interesting. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of things you identify as issues or things that people need to deal with themselves are relevant to here in the UK. I always think we're a little bit behind you at the moment, but you've had a big change in the US recently. This new Trump administration is a very different administration. What's the vibe like there now for you? How are you feeling things are in America? Because you've been through a weird kind of decade.
I would say relatively optimistic.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how I've been feeling, especially with Trump 2.0. Trump 2.0 is a different person than 1.0. 1.0 really didn't know what he was getting himself into, and he's admitted that in some interviews that he was kind of like, I'm actually here. How do I navigate this? But I think 2.0 realizes some of the mistakes that he made, and one of those mistakes is that he cared too much about what the opposition thought of him. The opposition is always going to be the opposition, but you need to move forward, build a coalition. And I think also he had to kind of sell some people. I don't think a lot of people believed, who's this guy coming in here? So he had a lot more resistance the first time around than he does this time. So I think it's good that he actually lost the last election.
You think so?
Yeah. Sometimes people need to see what it's like to not have something around. And they saw oh, this thing that we thought we wanted is actually horrible.
I tell you the difference here. When Trump first won the first election, there was a large percentage of the population. It felt like the majority were anti-Trump because I think a lot of the opinions on Trump come from the media, right?
Yeah. And
the majority of the media we have here is like CNN.
Exactly.
So they were getting the I would say CNN light, but still the CNN version of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
This time around, you got a lot more people saying, I want some of that.
Yeah.
That shit that's happening there, I want some of that here.
Yeah.
And he's created an optimism when it felt like, I don't know, man, it might have been different for you, but it feels like everything's gone to shit. He's created an optimism where people are like, I want some of that here.
Yeah. And you guys have the polite version of CNN.
Yeah. We had the BBC.
Right. You at least typically don't have 5 people arguing from remote.
No, but we still have it.
Yeah, you have a little bit of it. Yeah. But
the BBC is highly regulated.
Yeah, exactly. That's I guess that's a major difference there. But as far as the level of optimism coming from Trump, I think one thing too, I think he has better people who are around him. I think his chief of staff has a better stronghold on him. He's moved differently. Just the amount of times you actually see him is not because he's at a rally, is not because he's at some silly function. It's because he's signing another executive order. He's working. He's not giving too many interviews, even to the mainstream media. He's just doing his thing. Because anytime he does those interviews, they're just trying to get gotchas and stuff like that. It hurts him more than it helps him. But he's honestly just been working. Matter of fact, I would say his attorney general has done more interviews than he has, which is not necessarily a good thing. But that's kind of the situation. Whereas it would have been the inverse, the first go around. So he seems to be more focused. And I also think he understands he needs to pass some laws. He can't just sign executive order after executive order. But I'll tell you this. He's been moving at such a fast pace that we forget he's only been there a few months. Like, everyone is acting like he's been there for a year or two. And I was like, he just got here. That's how unprecedented he's been in office, is that they have such high expectations of him because of how fast he's been moving that they forget how long he's actually been in office. And so I would say, like, in any other presidency, a few months in, we'd be like, all right, he has like one thing that this person has done. I can name a whole bunch of things that Trump has done. Granted, some of them are through executive order, but it's just like boom, 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 just one thing after the other, one pursuing thing after the other. He closed the border essentially in a couple of weeks. That's, we barely get anybody coming through the border. Meanwhile, the previous administration said, oh, we have to have a law that's passed. It's like, we have the laws, we're just not enforcing it, right? They want some new immigration landmark bill, and it takes forever because it has to go through all these branches and make sure it's constitutional. And they know that. They knew it was BS in the first place. Trump knew that as well, came in and did what he had to do to close the border. They just needed enforcement. They just needed to enforce the law. So, I mean, that alone stopped the bleeding, right? Now it's about getting rid of much of the infection, right? And the infection has been that for years, actually decades, illegal immigration has been slowly entering our society and infecting many sectors of our economy. I've been talking about how in New Jersey, a lot of people don't talk about Jersey because no one really cares about Jersey, but actually New Jersey is very significant when it comes to warehouses. We have massive e-commerce now, so we ship stuff all over the world. New Jersey is very strategic because it's right next to New York City. It's wedged between New York City and Philadelphia. From New Jersey, you can drive to a whole bunch of major states, major locations. So New Jersey State, they've nicknamed as the warehouse state.
Okay.
It doesn't have the most warehouses out of any state, I think California, because of just the sheer size of it. But because of how dense it is, we have the most warehouses like per square mile. There's something to that effect because it's a small state. It's very dense, but there are warehouses everywhere. And I will tell you, from a previous job that I worked, my background's in IT. I did some consulting where I would support let's just say like a third-party company that would help to get workers for these warehouses. And it was considered low-skill labor. Well, I would go into these warehouses and it became very obvious that everyone's illegal. Everyone. Like, they don't drive. They get a van that picks them up strategically and brings them to these warehouse locations. They don't speak English. They have people who are part of this third-party company who speak Spanish and English. And it's very much so catered towards Hispanic illegals coming into the country. Now, it'd be one thing if it was like, oh, it's this one place, but it's every place. And it's not just this one company. It's just about every agency just like it.
How are they paying them? How do you get them through the books? So
that's a very interesting thing. I believe the stat I saw was about 80% of illegals commit some sort of paper fraud. So Social Security fraud, identity fraud, something like that. I mean, because you kind of have to, right? So if I pop up in the country and the cartel helps me get there and the cartel gives me an ID and it says, my name is Juan Hernandez. Okay, I'm Juan Hernandez. And then I go to a company that turns a blind eye, does no real checks. We have something in America called E-Verify, which is supposed to check someone's legal status. Well, in these particular industries, they only check if they're asked. And of course, no one asks.
They're not asked.
So it's an entire system of just kind of, looking the other way. Everybody knows what it is. And if I give you an ID that says Juan Hernandez and some social security number, you're just going to put it down on the thing and you're going to file it like this person's a contractor. and you're going to take out taxes. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. It's not my fault that it's all fraudulent, right? So it's very much so everyone's playing stupid, like they don't know what's actually going on. And here's the crazy part. I try not to name any names, but I will tell you major manufacturers that are international manufacturers, I've been inside the warehouses, all legal.
They want the cheap labor. Same with the hotels.
Exactly.
They want the cheap labor. They lobby for this stuff.
Yeah.
They want the cheap labor. They don't want to pay I mean, here, one of the biggest problems with even small and medium-sized businesses is labor costs. If you can get cheaper labor,
right?
On, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I've seen the Democrat/progressive meltdown with Trump like I did 8 years ago, where it was like, we voted in Satan. I mean, they were talking about it before the election. Have I seen that right? Is it less of a meltdown this time?
Yes. And as to why is a good question. I think the first time around, I think we had like the perfect storm, although it's not a good storm, but it's a perfect storm, so to speak. We had lockdowns, so we had a lot of people just stuck inside, pent up frustration. Then George Floyd. And then that was like the spark and everything just exploded from there. But we also had corporations all of a sudden switching their tone. The media doubling down on narratives. Like it was just one thing after the other, where everyone was just succumbing to radical left-wing positions and perspectives. And so it was kind of just like pushing, everything was just pushing in that direction. So that's why for me, it was like normal life was having to deal with, let's say OSHA, OSHA saying, well, everyone must get the vaccine. We're going to make private employers force their employees to get the vaccine, or they have to test every day. And they were trying to use OSHA to do that, which OSHA has no standing to do that, which I'm incredibly grateful that that ruling was knocked down. But, you had all these very radical positions, like on vaccines, very radical positions on race, all these particular things. And everyone was just bowing to it. That was the thing that was disappointing.
Like a religion.
Yes. It was very much so. Forget all the decades where we've all kind of just accepted these things as being normal. Actually, that was irregular. That was abnormal. Those aren't real things. The idea of having a colorblind society doesn't mean that obviously you can see that I'm black, but it doesn't mean that you treat me differently. That's the whole point. To seeing people in mainstream outlets saying like colorblindness is something that you don't want. Actually, that's oppressive that you don't acknowledge and call, treat them differently because they are a different skin tone. I was like, that's the definition of racism that we wanted to get away from, right? Like the civil rights movement wasn't about you don't oppress black people, you don't treat black people differently. The civil rights movement was that you don't treat people differently, right? You don't use the government to enforce laws to treat anyone differently. And now they're advocating essentially for the inverse, right? To use the government to push for arbitrary diversity, to push for people to be in certain positions just because of immutable characteristics.
But it all failed, man.
It all fails, yes.
Because I think people are going, I'm fucking sick of this shit.
Yep.
I'm sick of this constant state of, what's the latest campaign? What's the latest thing we're putting on our Instagram? What's the latest thing we're protesting, shouting it? And it wasn't real issues. Like one of the things that people cared about, we've got the same here. People are like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm just sick of it. I don't know what happens to the Democrat Party now. I don't, but because like, I don't see anyone coming forward. You think that's someone I can get behind, because I think a strong Republican Party needs a strong Democrat Party, and vice versa. It's like here a strong right wing needs a strong left wing.
I agree.
They all came to the middle, and we've got this weird bullshit, but I don't see it.
No, I don't see it either because it doesn't exist. I mean, the reality is that Donald Trump came in with a coalition. I actually wrote a piece about this and did a video about it. In the old days, someone like Tulsi Gabbard would be the young up-and-coming Democrat. Oh, wait, she was a young and up-and-coming Democrat.
And they attacked her.
Right? So much so that she abandoned the party, became Republican. For the longest time, she was basically being an independent. Said, I am a Republican. Trump took her on as part of a coalition. So now she's part of that rise. And I think she's a very intelligent person. I don't always agree on all of her stances, but I think she's well-meaning. And there's something that is impressive about her. Someone like J.D. Vance, although he's more conservative than she is, but he's a very smart, down-to-earth, more relatable person that someone like him used to exist on the Democratic ticket. He has a sense of humor, right? So,
dude, I like his interviews. I've watched 2 or 3 of his interviews. I'm like, I like this guy.
Right. And in the old days, the Republicans were the old cruddy, very religious, had no sense of humor, uncool old people. That was essentially what the Republicans used to be. And now it's switched. I don't know if you've seen like the protests with of Elon. How dare Elon? It's all senior citizens. It's all senior citizens. And I was like, when did the Democrat Party become the old people party? Like, all the young people have abandoned. They're freaking out because they see in polling that they're moving right. They're moving towards the Republican Party.
Well, we have that here, man. So I don't know if you know that we have this party Reform.
Yeah.
They've come out of kind of nowhere over the last few years. They're leading the polls we saw yesterday, voter intention.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of young people because it's young people who either can't get jobs or can't buy a house.
Right. Or
it's middle-class people they're now at a stage where it's like, I'm working, my wife's working, our mortgage rate's gone up, everything's got more expensive, I can't afford shit. And by the way, I'm having to deal with all these other kind of pressures where I'm seeing, illegal immigrants being given place in hotels, which, by the way, I don't think damages the economy the way people say, but it's that signal. It's like, I can't afford, and you're spending billions on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Reform have come out and said, well, we're going to change everything. And a lot of people are drifting towards them to the point where they're on track to win the next election. A brand new party that didn't really exist a few years ago, bring a brand new party. But I think that's the young people.
I agree with you. I think the difference between the US and the UK in this regard, it's the same motivations.
Oh, you're advertising to us. What will you need?
You guys already take too much of our bad shit. But the difference, I would say, politically, is that forming another party here is a lot easier than doing that in the United States. Yeah. I get the impression, because I do pay attention a little bit when it comes to UK politics, I get the impression that money is not necessarily the driving force in politics here. I'm not to say that it's not, but it is the dominating force in the United States. You can't get anything done without money. You can't run a Congress seat. I had a friend who ran for Congress out in California. She's like, you need $1 million.
Damn.
You need to raise $1 million. Now, tell someone, to sell Girl Scout cookies and raise, a couple $1,000. You're like, man, how am I going to get that? You need to find a way to raise $1 million. Well, how do you do that? You get big donors.
For the campaigning.
Right? Because you got to advertise, you have travel expenses, you have all these different things. Because it's not, here's short. For all these seats, you're campaigning for like a year plus. And for many of these people, they can't even work. They can't have an actual job. So who are the people who can go with a year plus without actually working a job?
There's not many, man.
Not many, unless they're already somewhat wealthy. Or maybe they happen to have a spouse who makes a good income to take care of them so they can go on the road and constantly market themselves. But it's just they need a lot of money. And a congressional seat, they're running for office every 2 years. So they're perpetually begging for money. And that's where I've seen where congressmen and congresswomen are like, this is my last year. I'm done begging. Right? They'll do...
Yeah, but they never stop. They always say it.
No, some of them actually do. Some of them actually do. But it's a lot. It's a lot of begging for money. The financial aspect is part of it. So the reason I bring that up is because telling someone to form a third party in the United States that is winnable, you also have to get the financial aspect to buy into it. And no one wants to give money, nevertheless give money to an election seat that's not likely to win, to give money to a new third party that is going to get walloped for a decade.
The humble bee, a keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
Is it the same with at state level and county level, that it's still pretty much all Republican or Democrat? Do you ever get independents or other weird little parties?
Very few.
Because that's what you can do here. You can start a party here and go for local elections and get voted into council, and you can take over a council, or you can be a mayor and you can be independent, and it can happen.
Yeah.
And that's what it tends to be, more of a grassroots movement. You win some council seats, and then maybe you go for a council and you have an MP. And I mean, Reform have only got 5 MPs now, or they got a couple more recently, didn't they? So yeah, I've got 7 MPs now.
Okay.
Of a total of, I think, about 630 seats. Yet they're polling to win the next election, but they did it it starts as a grassroots movement.
Right.
And anyone, I could start a party where I live in this little town, Bedford. We would have a chance of winning council seats. We could eventually win the council, and then you build a party. So it's more like you can start and you can build up slowly. You can build your party up and you can raise a bit more money. It takes longer. I mean, it might take 2, 3, 4 elections to get a meaningful imprint, but you can do it. But the thing is that's worked in Reform's favour right now is that the Labour and the Conservative Party have both come to the centre. The difference between them is very minimal. They're both big state, high tax, high borrowing, high surveillance, crackdown on civil liberties parties. And you're voting for minor differences. You might have a slightly smaller tax under Conservatives and slightly more kind of socialist redistribution under Labour, but you don't really know the difference. And also, the kind of people who've gone into politics, they're not... Never had that before, have we? Is that a test? I think it's a test. First fire alarm test we've had since we've been here. You don't have... So what used to happen in the UK, you used to get people who would maybe served in the armed forces or had been successful businessmen who would go into politics because they wanted to make the country better. But the recruitment now starts much earlier. It starts in universities or, in senior schools where you get people join, maybe the Conservative Party, and they join the Young Conservatives or Young Labour.
Right.
And then they work their way up into... Are people running out with their hair on fire? Nah, it's a test. And then when they get into government, they've got no real experience. They don't know how to run a company. They've not had to worry about payroll next week. They haven't had to worry about sales. They haven't commanded a troop of soldiers. They haven't got no fucking experience. And so they're not particularly intelligent, and they're not particularly good, and they're not particularly principled. They're thinking about their career because post MP, you get your speaker things, you get your make it interesting cut. This will be our intro. Yeah, so all the incentives are fucked up. So yes, you can start a grassroots movement, or you can get into politics fairly easily here, but you don't have to be very good.
Yeah.
You don't have to be very principled. You don't have to be particularly intelligent. And once you're in, the incentives are such that you kind of vote for the same. You don't want to upset the apple cart because it's a great grift being in government. So it's like, no, fuck these people. But yeah, so and I think that's why part of the money is important, by the way. Reform need money now to be able to build and form a government if it's going to happen. But part of the reason we've had the kind of erosion of our society is politics isn't working anymore. And look, there's an argument it's never worked, that all politicians are shy, blah, blah, blah. But like, it's really not working now. There is, voter apathy is a thing. Voter turnouts down to 60%. And people are like, who should I vote for? There's all the same bullshit. They're going to tax me more. we've got lawlessness on the streets. People just, stuff that you get in America here, people just walk into shops and take shit because they're not going to be arrested. Where I live, there's open drug dealing on the streets. There's open drug taking. And so we've had this kind of moral decline and erosion of society, which is, to me, is just this shift to the left that we've had, even from conservative people.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of acceptance and allowance for things to just be a bit shit. And the change is coming, man.
Yeah, we actually have the same problem.
I can imagine you tell me if I'm wrong, but I can imagine you've been a voter of the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
I can imagine under Clinton you would have been, under Obama you probably would have been.
Obama was
probably
the first
would have
person
been.
I voted for.
Oh, you're the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
I would have been, but I like both of those guys. I'm not ideologically trapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even to this day, I tell people I'm an independent, which is true. I left being wholly a Democrat for a reason, because I wanted to start thinking for myself. Once you become part of a party, at least in my opinion, you start to become very skewed. And you rationalize the bad stuff, and you don't talk about the bad stuff. So by remaining independent, I want to be able to criticize whatever I see as bad. But we have the same problem. What you're just describing, same issue. And a lot of people don't realize, like, our local elections, we always talk about the national stuff. We talk about Trump,
Mm-hmm.
we always talk about national, but our local elections are ruled by low voter turnout. So and I've criticized Republicans for saying stuff like this. They always say, like, blue cities, as if it's inevitable. And it's like, well, actually, if you look at it, no one votes. It's like they get Chicago, I think, when Mayor Johnson came in, I think they had somewhere around 20% voter turnout. Maybe it was less than that.
That is, have a look up for ours, kind of what local election turnout is for ours. I think there's a lack of connection locally as well.
Well, there's a lack of options.
Okay.
See, I don't know about here, but the difference is locally, because everyone has this, well, that's theirs and this is ours. And we have very few what they call like purple areas, which is a toss up. It can go back and forth. And it's usually outside of cities. So it might be a purple county or a purple, this particular district or something like that. But within the major cities, they refuse to be competitive, right? And this isn't anything new. Chicago hasn't had a Republican mayor since the 1800s. Like,
that's a long time.
That's a long time.
What was the turnout there?
30.2.
30.2. Okay.
Yeah. But that's still crap.
It's
most
crap.
people, when I go, it's a lot of old people who go.
Yeah.
And I know what they do. They pick blue in the general elections, so they pick blue locally.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that. There's not a lot of independent thought. I think one of the main reasons is if you vote in the national election, you're voting for big policy changes that you think will affect you positively. Usually they don't either way. But with the local election, because locally there's not too much. I mean, a mayor in the UK has a lot of control, can do a lot, but not every town or city has a mayor. But I think there's a lack of connection because you don't see what they're doing and you don't really see how it will affect you.
Well, this is also like an information issue too, because when I was younger, we used to have local news, and it seemed to be relatively separate. Like, it was a different model. It was separate from national news, separate from watching like NBC News or something of that nature. Now it's all national. Even like local stuff, they dive into national things. And so if there is corruption going on, you don't know about it. If there is someone running for office, you probably don't know about it. There's even more legwork that needs to be done if you are someone who's running locally. And actually in the States, local elections matter a lot. They have a lot of power, even in just like one town. They have a lot of power and they can dictate a lot. And if they misappropriate funds, it dramatically affects their city or town or whatever it might be. A great example actually is, I don't know if you've heard of Super Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Does that name sound familiar?
Maybe.
So
why have I? Tell me.
She did a whole bunch of like ridiculous stuff at the city council meetings, playing New Jack City theme music and all, like wearing costumes and stuff like that. But she was very antagonistic.
I already like her.
Well, not in a good way.
Oh, good. Okay.
But she came in and they had the town. This is a small town that's outside of, I think it's technically a city, but it's a small city outside of Chicago, right? And most of their money's coming from property taxes. They don't have a whole lot of business, right? It's relative, I would say, lower middle class economically, right? And she came in there and she just started buying stuff and started taking out credit cards, started buying vehicles that she would use. All of a sudden, she had personal security details. Now,
she's corrupt as fuck.
She's very obviously corrupt. And what made it crazy was that a nearby township, she became the equivalent of a mayor. It's like I think it's like a superintendent, right? But she became the equivalent mayor. So at both places, she was in charge. And she did the same stuff, taking trips to Vegas. Like, it was just wild stuff. And everyone was like, what are you doing? Why is this happening? Hooking her friends up with jobs. She knew this guy who's a convicted sex offender and gave him a job where he enters people's homes working for the city. I was just, like, it was just wild, absolutely wild. So I think she's she's on her way out, right? But that's just one local election. So they went from having a surplus to a massive debt because for the longest time, city council was trying to see the books and she was keeping them from seeing the books, right? And she was hiding it. So now that they had like independent audits and things like that. The former mayor of Chicago actually came in to do one of the audits for the township and was pulling up stuff like, we have here at Amazon, she spent $2,000. We have, it's wild. And these are small towns that don't have that much money, right? They're just taking in property taxes from houses, which aren't like expensive houses in the first place. So that one person ruined a town and a small city budgetarily. And so that's how much power that they do have. All the stuff that they wanted to do, like, we need to fix up the roads. This is in Illinois near Chicago. It gets cold a lot. It snows. They always have to do construction and things of that nature. Well, we need money for that. She wasn't paying vendors, right? It was just...
What happened to her? Did she get charged eventually?
Well, FBI is still investigating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so this is the interesting thing is like, I certainly been sucked into this kind of globalism, global trade, blah, blah, blah thing. But I kind of come to the realization that really all we're doing is when we push for this, we're pushing more money into a smaller number of hands. And I don't know if it's me, like I want this or I'm sensing this, but I'm sensing that we may see a push towards localism now, where people have realized, actually, who's benefiting from this? We've destroyed our towns. Up and down the country in the UK, we just have a issue where it's a plague of alcoholics, drug addicts, shoplifters, criminals, just destroying town centres that people don't want to go into. The shops are closing. They're being replaced by maybe charity shops and bedding shops, not the shops you really want on a high street.
Right.
And I know people are sick of it. They're just people don't have the solution yet. But I feel this kind of sense of local pride may come back and you may get communities start to rebuild this. And so then local elections will become more important. So that's my hope, man. But anyway, the book, The Children We Left Behind. Let me ask you something.
Yes.
One of the things I noticed in the US over the last 4 years, but probably longer than that, 8 years, is that there was a lot of whinging and complaining. Like, this is wrong, that's wrong, let's protest against this kind of radical left stuff, where kind of everyone became a victim. And I know you've talked about victim mentality. We have that here. And I think it kind of manifests itself in a number of ways, where it's like, the government should give me everything I need and want. If I don't want to work, then I'm not going to work, and the government should give me what I want. If I do want to work, well, I should get a really good job. But I found from younger people, there's like a lack of work ethic. And I think for some reason, something's happened over the it may be like a multi-decade thing, or last decade or two, where it's gone from I don't know how old you are, I'm 47. When I was a kid, I had 2 paper rounds, and then I had a milk round, and then I worked in a shop. Then I was in a factory and I was putting handles on umbrellas. Like, I wanted to work and I wanted to earn money and I wanted to be something.
Right.
I don't know what we've done to the kids now, but there's a lot of privilege, expectation, and victim mentality in them that I don't know where it's come from, but I don't think it's good for now, and I don't think it's good for the future.
So I would say, I don't think it's necessarily a generational thing. I mean, partly, young people, they have their own struggles, just like every generation, they have particular struggles. They always look different. but I always look at what economic class they're coming from.
Okay.
As far as like their family. Because the thing I noticed, the ones who are always talking about the government needs to do these things for us and privilege this and privilege that, and I'm a victim, tend to be the kids who are on the higher parts of the economic ladder.
Interesting.
It makes me think about my old boss. My old boss owned the company. He was a millionaire, right? One kid is a communist, one kid's a socialist.
An actual communist.
Just like
with his iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's how they identify, right? They think that the government should take care of them and things of that nature. And some might say, oh, it's because they're entering these schools and these schools introduce these ideas. And that might be partly true. But people can introduce an idea to you. You have to believe it. Like it has to match up to something. And I think, when I don't want to like blanket state if you're coming from a wealthier house, this is what happens. But there tends to be a mindset from parents on the upper economic ladder that I need to pave the way for my child, right? Take care of everything. And that kid grows up never facing any sort of hurdles. So when you see like these colleges where the kids are having emotional freakouts and people are like, oh, they're exaggerating. I actually believe it. I believe for many of them, they're having genuine freakouts because they didn't have to face hardship. And so if the first time you're facing something that's hard is when you're 18, 19 and in college, man, life is going to be very difficult for you. So I think many of them, they've grown up in a privileged type of life where they haven't had to face these things. They don't understand the importance of work ethic because they didn't have to. Mommy and daddy, took care of the household. They paid for this. Anytime I wanted something, they got it for me, right? Oh, we always took trips. We did all these things. It feels good that everyone does something for you, right? But they don't realize that they're being handicapped for the rest of their life. And so when they do go to college and they come out with this debt, wait, this is unfair. Why do I have this debt? Mommy, daddy, can you pay for it? Well, we don't have that much money. Joe Biden, get rid of my debt.
Hey, they're reversing that, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah, they're saying no fucking charge. You're paying your debt.
Yes, pay it. Right. And that's a whole other thing. But that was a real thing for many people. They were voting for Biden because Biden made this big promise. We're going to get rid of your debt. Didn't tell him how he would be able to.
Buying votes.
Right. Exactly. So, but I think that the element of expectation, victimhood, all of these different things, it tends to come from these kids who are from the upper middle class to upper class echelon. They're the kids who go to the Ivy League schools. They're, from my perspective, like, oh, these kids, like, you got it. Like, you're good. And they come out as like, no, life is horrible. Just like,
and do they turn other people into victims as well? Do they go around looking at other maybe socioeconomic groups and say, no, you are a victim and we're here for you? Is it not just being a victim themselves?
Correct, because there is a savior element to it.
Right.
They're not actually advocating for them. They're trying to make themselves look good. That's the difference. So, like, one thing that drives me crazy, it may drive me crazy more because I am Black, but it's when you're having a conversation about something and someone drudges up Black people. And I was like, where did that come from? It doesn't match what's going on here, but you're just using them as a political weapon or like a rhetorical weapon to win some sort of argument, but you don't actually care. Matter of fact, you don't even know any Black people, nevertheless care about them, right? It just becomes this idea, I need to say these things, I want to make sure we acknowledge the African Americans who have been oppressed for all these. Oh, yes, you're wonderful. Like, it's all empty. It's empty bullshit. So I do see that a lot, the amount of saviorism that exists. If I can actually tell you a quick story.
Yeah, tell me, man. We got time.
I started traveling, bouncing around Europe, and one time I was in Portugal, and I was sitting there having a conversation. This was when I was a Democrat at the time, but I was having a political discussion with two French girls. And we're just having a dialogue, and this older woman, she says, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to eavesdrop, but I was hearing your conversation." She's like, "I'm a doctor. I'm from the U.S. I live in Mexico." She's like, you're very astute. You're very, like, you're sharp with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. I was like, oh, thanks. She's giving me compliments, and we were having a little bit of a conversation. It's going on for a few minutes. And then she says to me, yeah, because Republicans see you as a nigger. And I was like, all right.
That's bold. That's bold.
It's very bold. It's very bold. And we kind of went on a little bit. I was like, all right, thanks. And we just kind of kept it moving. But for me...
hold on. What point do you think she was trying to make?
She was trying to make the Republicans look like the bad guy, but she ended up making herself look like the bad guy.
We had a similar thing recently where I think this is people... I think that's a tantrum. I think she's just had a tantrum.
Yeah.
Because we had it recently. We're our football club in Bedford. We got a football team, and where we live, we got these hats made, these red hats that said "Make Bedford Great Again." Like a bit of fun. We're fucking around, but there's also a point to it. It's like we've had this drift of our town that's gone to shit. It's the same problem all across the UK. Right. Every town is suffering from the same problems, right? And when every town's suffering, there's a problem. Anyway, we got these hats made. And we're at the football, and it's been all weekend. There's a bunch of people wearing these hats, laughing and joking, loving it. This girl comes up to me and she's like, can I just talk to you? And by the way, this is our big game of the season. There's 1,500 people there. Our investors, the Winklevoss, are there. It's a good day. The sun's shining, everyone's having a good time. She's like, I need to talk to you about something. I was like, okay, yeah, what's up? She said, look, with all those red hats that you're selling, you've introduced a fascist element to this football club, and lots of people don't like it. I was like, who doesn't like it? She said, well, there were people who've left. They were here and they've left because of the red hats. I was like, people haven't left because of the red hat. Let's just make Bedford great again. She's like, but Trump is a fascist and he's making fascism popular again in America, and you're bringing it here. And I just wanted to give you a bit of feedback. And at that time, I was like, do you know what? I'm not having this. This is our day. This is our good day. I'm not buying into your bullshit. And I walked off and thought about it. I thought, no, this is a tantrum. You're a never Trumper. You hate MAGA. You hate everything sounds. I get it. It's not you. Right. But you're having a tantrum and trying to bring my day down. You're trying to manipulate me against it. I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's those people who are so far to one side, they can't see the world shifting in front of them. And I don't know how their heads work, but they cannot see the world has shifted and said, everything you stood for, campaigned for, and promoted for the last 4 years has been unequivocally rejected by the American public. I mean, look at the vote. They won everything. Right. Okay? And you now don't have a single candidate that anyone can look to and think that's hope and inspiration for the Democrats. And you're so upset by this, you're now just going to manipulate people. I think those situations are similar. I think that's just a tantrum.
You could be right. I would say that for this lady, clearly she's talking about her.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
She's not talking about anybody else. It was her motivation. And women tend to be very...
Hold on, was she a black lady herself?
Oh, she was a black lady herself?
Okay, interesting.
No, I'm asking you. Is that what you're saying? She was a black
No, you tell him. No, mine was this white chick. But...
Oh, I was talking about yours.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah, for yours, she was very clearly talking about herself. She wasn't talking about other people that she saw. She was just talking about her.
Typical manipulation.
Right. And I recognize that women are very much more socially aware. So even in a moment where she feels this particular way, she doesn't want to give the impression that it's just her. So she's going to make it like some people are saying this, right? So that's the, I'm focused on words all the time. So that's the rhetorical, sidestepping. It's actually her. Yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas most guys would be like, I don't fucking like this.
Yeah. Get rid of your stupid fucking hat.
Right. No guy would, if you saw a guy come up to you and say like, some people don't like the thing that you're doing, you're like, who the fuck are these some people?
Yeah. I'd be like, well, I'm keeping the fucking hat. He'd be like, all right, well, let's have a bit and we'll have a bit.
Yeah. But no, the doctor in my story, she was a white lady.
Okay.
And for me, it was...
Hold on.
Yeah.
The conversation you were having from that, had she taken from that you were a Republican?
I was a Democrat.
Oh, you were a Democrat?
Yeah, I was a Democrat.
So what was she trying to do then?
We were having it was a political discussion. Okay. And it was very clear that I was giving a moderately left-wing viewpoint at the time, because that's where I was relatively. And so she overheard that appeals to her because she's a Democrat. And so we were having a discussion, and she's giving me compliments. She's not insulting me or anything like that. We're ideologically aligned. So we weren't debating. We weren't anything like that. She was saying, yeah, this, and we were kind of just going back and forth, agreeing with each other. And then she said that. And I thought to myself, I know we're in a different country, but we're Americans. And you kind of know, like, one, you don't know me. And you know that some people are very sensitive to that.
We can't say that word.
Right. Right. Well, even in the US, like, don't say it unless you know someone and you're like, is it cool if I say that? Because some people are very sensitive to it. That's just what it is. I'm not that person. I care about like the context. If you said, hey, saying this word is bad, I'm not going to freak out because you said the word. The context is that saying this word is bad. But if you're using it to try to make other people look bad and you don't know me, and you're not saying like this person said this thing, you're saying that's how they see you. And I'm just like, but it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It was a very weird, like, you didn't have to say that, lady. You could have said, I think they're racist. And I would be like, all right.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. But she wanted to use that for some sort of effect. And I thought that was...
She picked the wrong guy.
I mean, I wasn't going to fight with her or anything like that. I don't know the lady. I just kind of moved on from the conversation. All right, nice meeting you, and just kind of moved on. But I've always thought about that. Like, what made that person come out of their mouth to say that to me, knowing that there is a sensitivity, right? The left is supposed to be very aware of people's sensitivities. And you were to say that to me, like, why would you feel comfortable doing that? You don't know how I'm going to react. I could have just said, what did you say? Like, I could have exploded on her and she wouldn't have realized that. So I think this is one of those moments where she was trying to manipulate, right? She's trying to get an emotional reaction. She was trying to make herself look like the good guy, but she violated all the social rules to try and make other people look bad when she really made herself bad. And I would even go as far, granted, I'd be guessing because I don't know her, but it felt like projection. Right? And that's when I wrote my first book, Black Victim, Black Victor. I was often talking about how for you to see me as an automatic victim, no matter what I do, that is a way, that's a sign of bigotry. It's not a sign of liking someone or helping someone, right? If you love someone and you genuinely care about them, you will help them, but you wouldn't let them wallow in some narrative. But they just want you to wallow in a narrative. And not only that, they don't want to help you. They want to do for you because you can't do it.
Yeah.
Right? I got to do it. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of this for you. Don't worry. We'll change the rules. We'll make sure we get just enough Black people in there, right? Because it'll give you a shot, right?
But is there still this mindset that if you're Black, you've come from a rough upbringing?
For some people, yes.
It's just so weird.
For some people, yes.
Look, and I know, probably statistically it is true, but I know I don't see it anymore. Like I see statistically there are issues. We have it here in London, right? We statistically have drug and gang and knife crime, which is predominantly more young Black lads.
Right.
But there are white lads in their gangs. There are white people in the same situation. There are statistics, but it's not the norm.
Right. Right. These are the outliers.
Yeah.
On the fringes. And so that's like when we get into conversation of criminality in the U.S., it's disproportionately high. Like it's mostly Black males. Black males are about 6-7% of the population, the U.S. population. And if you look at the violent crime and things like that, it's disproportionately high. But obviously, it's disproportionately high amongst this very small group of criminals.
But it's an economic reason, right? There's an economic alignment.
There could be an economic reason, but it's also linked with a social reason as well. And so for me, I'm looking at the origins. What are the origins that would lead to someone feeling comfortable breaking into your house, hurting you, shooting someone else? What are the cultural reasons why someone would feel okay with that? And that's why I always bring it back to the childhood. So the other stat if you look at,
this is like fatherless homes and
correct. It is disproportionately high when it comes to Black Americans as far as unmarried homes where children live in. And so if I'm to look at that number and also understand from a psychological, basic childhood development, what happens when young men have no male figure within the home to raise them, in many ways to train them to be emotionally regulated. Because what you're seeing is kids who are antisocial, right? They're not emotionally regulated. and men who are not emotionally regulated are dangerous. So who is going to teach them? And as a father, my son's 19. That was part of me raising him, was that when he wants to get excited, you got to teach him to chill out, right? You have to check him. So now he's a very calm young man. He's very reasoned. He thinks he's not being emotional. But emotionally unregulated men punch holes in the wall, right? They crash into cars because they get angry driving and someone cuts them off, right? They are people who can't control themselves because they were never shown to do that. Now give them a gun. Like, this is the type of situation that you're dealing with. So we're dealing with antisocial, emotionally unregulated men, and they're they get involved with lots of criminality. So it's the numbers are even smaller. I'll give you an example. Someone was telling me, I might be butchering the numbers slightly, but someone was telling me in Minneapolis, they were having a rash of carjackings, right? And people were feeling unsafe, like they're going to get carjacked left and right. Come to find out, it was 12 or 13 boys that were doing it. Now, Minneapolis is not the biggest city in the world, but it's a major city in our country. And 12 to 13 boys made the entire city feel unsafe that they were going to get carjacked.
That's crazy.
Right? It doesn't take that many. So it's not just that they made a mistake, it's that they're constantly involved in criminality, and it's a repeated behavior over and over. Yeah, they stole your car. Now they're going to rob this store. Now they're going to shoot at someone. Like, it's just a repetitive thing. So we're seeing hyper criminality from the fringes. Those are the ones. So, like, I know every time I talk to Brits, they often ask me about the guns in the U.S. But if you look at gun crime, gangs, number one. Or it's very personal. It's not, people aren't walking around twirling guns and shooting.
Yeah, it's gangs, crimes of passion,
right? Crimes
suicide.
of passion. Exactly.
Kids maybe finding a gun.
Exactly.
Or somebody's mentally deranged. Like we have it's similar but different in the UK, but we have a massive knife problem.
Right.
I think it's predominantly gangs, right, Carl? By the way, that's my son.
Okay.
He's 21, so a couple of years older than yours. But it's predominantly that. But we also have murder, crimes of passion.
Absolutely. That's going to exist no matter what.
Yeah.
But everyone wants to make it about the guns, and it's not about the guns. Just like here, they're trying to make it about the knives. They're like, oh, we'll ban these types of knives. And it's like, no, you're doing that because that's the Band-Aid that makes you feel good. But the actual issue is so difficult because you can't sign a bill to fix it. There's no law that you can fix better parents making better choices and being involved in children's lives. Like, you just can't do that. Which is why, like, in this book, I don't make any sort of legislative, I'm not asking for the government to do anything, because this is not a governmental fix. This is a fix of the heart. This is a fix of every adult who makes a child. They have to make choices that better their children's lives, because they need to understand, by you choosing yourself or choosing someone else or doing everything else except for taking care of your kid, you're creating the problem. You're creating the social ill.
It's very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin.
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with Casa.
What do we got here, Con?
Nice climb stats up to December 2024 for a 12-month period.
What did they do? 54,000 police recorded offensive.
It's up 87%.
Damn.
262 murders, 57 of which were under 25.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I actually thought it'd be higher.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I thought it'd be higher. It always feels like there's one a week, right? One or two a week that you hear about.
They're not always murders. Sometimes
they're stabbings, and yeah. Yes, and these are the kids we've left behind, right?
Yeah.
This is part of the heart. But, like, this is great for somebody who thinks, shit, I want to be a better dad. But how do you even fix the problem that exists where, socially and culturally, there are so many, you don't want to blame either the party, but there are men and women getting together, she's getting pregnant and he's not getting involved. And I assume a range of reasons. Dads just don't want to be fucking involved, or they separate and there's some kind of dispute between the parents.
Yeah.
Some end up in jail. Like, there's a range of reasons, but how do you even fix that? How do you get to the point where people are only having children in a happy home? Because you can only teach this to the people who are there and want to be a better dad to their kid when they're around them. But there's a lot who aren't even around them.
Well, you can't fix what you don't acknowledge.
Yeah, okay.
And so we have to get to a point, and that's actually what I'm kind of trying to do in this book, is to acknowledge that it is a problem. And then granted, we're having a conversation about racially speaking, but it's a bigger problem nationally. And actually, that's why I say Western, because the UK is right behind us, right? I think it's in the United States, it's like 23% of children are growing up in a separate home from one of their parents.
Can I add a question into that as well? Is there an equal growing problem that the dad is around, but the kids are up in their room on mobile phones and on their computer, and then the family isn't mixing as a unit like it should be?
Yes. That definitely does exist. So like even just making sure that we have both parents in the home, to me, that's the minimal, right? Be there. If you're there, you increase the likeliness that you'll be involved in your child's life. But obviously, I've talked to many of people who have had the parents. My dad was there. He worked all the time, rarely talked to us.
This guy.
And so it's unfortunate because in many ways for them, they feel like they didn't have a father, just in the same way I didn't have my father. He wasn't there. So the emotional turmoil that I felt, they also felt, right? It's this absence of love, absence of direction, teaching them things, opening up to their children, things of that nature. They were just kind of like, I went to work, I did my part. It was that kind of mentality. But even those children are lacking, and they grow up and they're struggling because of it. So that's definitely an issue. And now entering the technology part, that's another excuse as to why some parents are becoming less and less involved in their kids' lives, which kids can get involved in technology, that's fine. But you have to make sure that you find a way to interject, like, what game are you playing? What's this game about? Show some sort of interest if they're into games. Take them off the games and do something else with them, but you have to interject in your child's life, teach them some sort of lessons. You know what? You like games? When I was a kid, we had this game. Oh, that's interesting. They learn something about you. You want to build a relationship. And I don't think we actually talk about, we always talk about raising kids, but it's a relationship between the two, between the mother and the father and the mother and father and towards the children. You want an actual whole relationship.
Is it a hard thing to sell?
No. I think it's one of those, everyone knows it, but no one talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows, like, I talk about rationalizing bad behavior. The only reason you would rationalize something is because you know it's not good.
Yeah.
Things that are good, like, I'm going to have a healthy meal. No one needs to rationalize why they want a healthy meal. But if you say, I know I'm on a diet, but I've been good, so I'm going to have a cake, right? You're not supposed to have cake. You're rationalizing this behavior. It's something that you're not really supposed to do. So we see that in divorce. If I'm happy, my children would be happy. That's rationalizing because that is detrimental. It's the thing that everyone knows.
Everyone says that as well. The kids will be happier because they know we're unhappy.
Right. And that's not how kids operate. Kids are people pleasers, right? And especially for small children, their mother and their father, especially assuming they're married and they're in the same home, the mother and the father are a child's world. So when they split apart, the world splits apart. They don't know how to handle that. Children don't understand adult relationship dynamics. And even if you try to like dumb it down to child speak, mommy and daddy don't love each other, what does that mean to that child? They can't fully grasp that. And that's why for many kids, they turn it into, it's my fault. Did I do something? Could I have been a better kid?
That's rough on a kid.
It's very rough. It's very, because children, their brains aren't done developing. Your son's 21. His brain's not done developing.
Yeah, you're not done yet, boy.
Right? And so especially if they're 5 and 6, you tell them that mommy and daddy no longer going to live together, and you got to go over here on the weekends, and you're going to live here, and dad's going to come around. Like, how does a child handle that? And it's a very, very difficult thing. I've seen situations where the father lives in the same neighborhood, right? So he can get the kids and everything, and he's trying his best to be involved. Those kids are still just as damaged as any other situation of divorce, right? It's the element of what they know is normal is no longer normal. It is virtually different, and it's split apart, and what was comfortable is no longer comfortable, and they're trying to figure out why, and they're questioning if they are the reason as to why.
So I often think of the breakdown in certain areas of society, that it's an economic reason, but you're saying it's the breakup of the nuclear family as well.
I mean, economics fit into just about anything, right? But the economics is a choice. You know, we can go back, I don't know how many ages. People didn't have TVs and stoves and all types of stuff. In our viewpoint, they would be poor, but you know what? They had a solid family. They had a solid extended family. They made it work. Why? Because they understood the importance of the family. So the economics, I think sometimes we feel like you can't have a successful family if you're poor. And it's like, well, that's not true. Right? Does it make it harder? Sure. Right? It makes it harder to do certain things, but that's not the only reason, because having a family is far deeper than economics. You can be rich and raise children who are miserable, right? I've seen that too, where they end up killing themselves. Like, so the economics is just an excuse when it's necessary, right? It's a rationalization.
It's a quality of time, quality of relationship.
Time.
Quality of conversation.
It's the one thing you cannot buy. You can't buy time.
Nope.
And so all your children want is your time. I'll use an example. NBA players. NBA players are notorious for traveling around the country, and they knock up the woman here and a woman there, and they got 4 kids of 4 different women all over the country. And they throw a bunch of money, and the women get $1 million a year, and they live wherever they live, and they go to nice places, and the kids have everything, right? But you know what? More often than not, those kids resent their father because their father wasn't there. They're angry. Elon Musk is a great example. Elon Musk has a trans child. And granted, we can leave the trans part out of it.
That kid hates him.
That kid hates him.
That kid hates him.
He resents his father. And that's the part. And it's because Elon, you can't be in 12, well, I don't know how many kids he has, but you can't be in 12, 13 places at once, right? Your child wants your time. And the richest man in the world can't buy time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know in that situation if it's down to time or it's down to, because he came out pretty publicly rejecting trans ideas. He said, didn't he say my kid died or something? In reference to losing.
He said my son died.
Yeah, my son died. In reference to losing him to what he thought was like radical trans stuff. I don't know the full details, but no, I mean, look.
But where was Elon?
You're talking more about how that kid's got to that situation.
Exactly. Right? We look at the end product, but I'm talking about the very beginning. When that child was 2, where was Elon? Was Elon in the office all day? Was Elon in the other part of the country? Where was he? Because very clearly, I'm just saying from all the experiences that I've seen, the child doesn't hate their parent because they did one thing wrong, or last year they messed up and they weren't around as much. But the entire life that everything was fine. Those kids tend to be very forgiving. This is a repeated cycle for this child. Granted, I don't have any specific details, but I'm looking at all the different examples. When children have animosity towards one of their parents or both, often it's for a reason. It's not from nowhere. It's for a reason. And when it's deep like that, where they've expressed hatred for their parents, sometimes it's not logical, but it's for a reason. You know, maybe it's based off of bad information or whatever, but how they feel is how they feel. And the parent allowed them to get to that point. So,
you know, I fixed it. I made him come and work for me.
There you go.
Now we get quality time together. But yeah, look, it's difficult. I mean, look, I think it's difficult for the parent to realize, like, my dad was a hard worker, provided for his family, wasn't around all the time, a shift worker, but I never really hated him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were times I was pissed off at him, like, you're not at my football or whatever. But I think I emulated him, thinking, well, I need to work and I need to work hard and provide. And definitely my kids sacrificed because of that, because I was away, I missed stuff. But there is a pressure on a dad to be a provider, to be the man to provide, and and then there's that social pressure to compete with others around them.
Right.
A guy going down the road, he's doing well, I need to do well, and I think there's been, I think over the last, I feel like the last 10 years, there's been a lot of attacks on the masculinity side of men.
Yeah, very true.
It's been degraded, it's not important, blah, blah, blah. And so I think there are pressures on dads, parents to try and be somebody and they get it wrong themselves.
Yeah. Listen, everything that I'm saying, I'm not speaking like I'm better than everybody. I've made mistakes and I've detailed some of them in the book. It's hard. It's hard being a parent, right? It's hard making the right choice all the time. But I think that parents also need to recognize that children are forgiving. Like what I usually, they tend to be forgiving, right? Especially if you're accountable. But the difference between a good parent and a bad parent is that a good parent cares if they're a bad parent. That's the difference. And so the fact that you do care will lead you more likely in the direction of correcting your behavior or correcting your decisions. You're like, you know what? I ignored my child when they said they didn't want to move. I should have listened to them. Maybe this time around I will make sure that we do these things together. And you make constant corrections. Like I've made mistakes in the very beginning part of my son's upbringing, and because I didn't have a father, so but I had to think about these things. I had to recognize like I could do better.
You never saw your father?
Rarely.
You see him now?
He's not alive.
Okay.
He passed away, I believe it's 2018. 2018 he passed away. I would see my father, well, just because we were mentioning before Detroit. He always lived in Detroit, but we eventually left Detroit when I was about 6. We moved to Virginia, then we moved to upstate New York, and eventually New Jersey. But especially when we left Detroit, obviously he lived in Detroit and, he's farther away, but I rarely saw him, nor did I hear from him. And a lot of stuff was happening, especially like the first few years of being away from Detroit. Being homeless, bouncing from house to house, all these different things happen. And my father wasn't there. I don't even think he knew what was going on, nor did he act like he cared. I think once things started sort of settling down, like when I was around 9 or 10, I would see him once every other year or something like that.
That's barely anything.
Yeah, it's barely anything.
So do you think we've devalued the parental roles, specifically the father? Have we devalued that as a role, as a society? You know how there's over the last whatever period, there's like this growing social pressure against smoking. Mm-hmm. It's like, you shouldn't smoke, it's bad for the people around you. Do you think we should have something similar for parenting, that there should be social pressure that you need to be a good dad, you need to be around?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I have a specific chapter about that.
Okay. and then I would add to that, be careful how I word this, but is feminism part to blame for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to get kicked for this.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's only heels. No, what I would say is, that's why I try not to make this, it's very easy to be like, oh, absent fathers, or even in my circumstance, absent father. But this is a male and female choice, right? Even when it comes down to family planning, who are you choosing, right? And if you're entering a relationship dynamic where you don't care if he's around or not, which is the attitude of some women that does exist, because I have a job, I can take care of myself, I'll take care of my kids, just pay child support, I'll take your pittance of child support. You don't need to be around. It's the idea that men are optional. You've heard the phrase, I'm the mother and the father, right? And that is a devaluing of what a father is. Because I have never heard a single father saying, I'm the mother and the father. Because men respect motherhood. And so the woman who would say that does not respect fatherhood, because they would never say such a thing. So yes, it is definitely a cultural shift as far as the purpose of the father. The purpose of the father is just the economic earner. And you know what's interesting for the feminists, because they're very anti-traditionalists, but they tend to be very much so, well, if you can fulfill the economic role, then you don't need him. So they actually take a very ultra-traditionalist viewpoint that the father is the economic earner. They don't realize it, but that's what they're actually doing by reinforcing that. So they devalue the father by saying he's only the economic earner. There's no other reason for him to be there. What else are you teaching your kids? They don't even talk about that. They don't talk about self-esteem, how the fathers are there to help to reinforce self-esteem. Discipline. Fathers are uniquely better at disciplining children than women are.
It's like because we're more scary.
It could be. That could be part of it. There are things that are just natural.
Yeah.
This isn't me trying to be a chauvinist. These are things that are natural. I've had women tell me this.
Oh, there's the same with women. There's something they're better at than us.
Absolutely. We complement each other. Men and women need each other. So this isn't about men being more important than women. There are certain things that I'm not good at that my wife is good at, right? We complement each other and we work together that way. But you need men. You need fathers. And your children need their father. I've seen my circumstance is a testament to it. What my life was like without having my father, how it affected me, years of depression, ending up in a mental hospital, like struggling with suicidal ideation, questioning my value, low self-esteem. It took decades to really get to the place where I'm at today.
Where was the flip for you? What happened?
It wasn't one flip.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a slew of things. My son was a big thing for me. I had my son at 21. And not knowing how to be a father while also trying to figure out how to be a man as well, is a difficult thing. I tell people I didn't become a man until my early 30s when I finally started to figure it out. But I had to raise my son in between that time and figuring out how do I be a good father? One, I didn't want to be my father. So just being present, that's bare minimum. But how do I be a good father? And constantly going back to, well, when I was a kid, I would have liked this and tried to be that for my son. And I would say I've been successful at that. He's happy, healthy. We have great communication. Now he's 19. You become more of a mentor, now that they're an adult. But the fact that,
it goes both ways. I don't know if you've how much you've experienced this with your son now. But there are times when my son says something to me and I'm like, he catches me out and I'm like about something I've done. And I'm like, shit, you're right.
Yeah.
And I have to rethink. So yes, my role as a mentor, but it can come the other way at me. And the younger they do it, the more dismissive I probably was of it. But now he's an adult, he's a man, he's 21 years old.
Yeah.
I know I have to respect him more because I know, for example, with my father's 77. I'm basically looking after my dad when he's over. I'm making decisions for him and telling him what to do. And that's a gradual process. But
right.
I'm my son's at the first, the starting point of that. It's starting to recognize I'm a bit older. He needs to do things with me and he gets things right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird thing.
My son is, I think he might be reluctant to do that, but I've always said I don't know everything.
It'll come, man.
Yeah. There will be a day, he surprises me at other stuff, but there'll be a day where he'll come and he'll be like, this, right?
If you think back to what we were talking about with the election, because I feel like the attacks on the nuclear family and traditional values came from the left. Mm-hmm. I think, being progressives, obviously, you had a lot of movement towards a lot more acceptance with gay communities and equal rights with homosexuals, which I think we all can agree that was a good move. But there was always this progress to more and more and more.
Right.
And the more and more and more took us away from just let's still respect the family unit, the nuclear family, the keeping the nuclear family together, masculinity, men's roles, women's roles. There's a large push away from that. Do you see this election as something that's going to course correct that too?
I think it can. I think some people were looking for some sort of signal. I do feel like more people are emboldened to say men are men and women are women. Fathers are important. Just basic stuff. That's how far things have eroded. These are basic things. They're not, these aren't things to oppress anybody. Saying that fathers are important doesn't mean that mothers aren't, right? So these are very basic things for us to state. And that's how deep we went, especially over the past 6+ years, of pretending that the basics aren't what they are, right? And it doesn't mean that, just use trans as an example. If someone is trans, I recognize it's something deeper than the trans for them, right? They didn't wake up at the age of 25 and just say, oh yeah, I'm trans. Like there's something that, a series of things usually that has happened to them throughout their life that has either contributed to the confusion or something of that nature, or something traumatic happened to them. So I'm very empathetic to someone who's in that situation. But if you want to live your life that particular way, I can't stop you. But don't tell me that you're not what you are, right? That is to get me to deny reality. And I can't do that, right?
There's been a course correction on that recently here with the Supreme Court ruling that biological sex is your recognized legal sex.
Right. And that's it. Doesn't that sound crazy that we've come to a point where we have to make sure we let people know that men are men and women are women? Like
yeah, I think there's a number of reasons for it.
Yeah.
Again, I think media and politicians most fear risk for their career and are therefore more likely to be what is deemed politically correct,
right?
Which is not go against an evolving narrative because they don't want to be yelled at by people. And I think on certain issues, you push the boundaries and you realize we've gone too far. And that can work both ways, right?
Right.
There was a push on what was once considered the boundaries for homosexuality. I mean, there was a time where, not too long ago, in the last century, where it was illegal to be homosexual in the UK, you could be arrested. I mean, they would chemically castrate people. I mean, it was a thing, and we pushed against that. Society went, you know what? Actually, we got no issue with gay people. This is cool. This is fine. I mean, we're in the gayest part of England right now. We're in Soho, London, and there's a huge gay community here, gay clubs, gay bars, and it's normal life now. I think the trans thing went on a similar journey, but then we got to the point where certain things were deemed a little bit ludicrous, where it's like, well, we need to talk about the sharing of locker rooms, and it's change rooms we call it here, or we need to talk about sports, and we pushed against it, we went too far, and then nature corrected me, went, hold on, this is too far. I think that's part of life.
Yeah.
I think that happens on every issue, which goes back to another thing which you talk about, which is really important, which is free speech, which we don't have here.
Yeah.
Remotely.
I should be very careful what I say.
Well, I think me as the publisher gets prosecuted. I've had a lawsuit.
I don't want you publishing.
Yeah, I've had one. I've had a 5-year lawsuit for some tweets I did. But we don't have fundamental free speech rights here. People say, yeah, we do, but just not this, that. No, we don't. You can be civilly prosecuted for saying things. You can be prosecuted by government. You can be arrested. You can be investigated. It's more common than you would expect.
Yeah.
And that makes the debate itself harder because you can be accused of hate crimes for saying certain things. And so that puts the pressure back. And I've always been envious of the First Amendment. Not so much the Second Amendment, but certainly envious of the First Amendment because we don't culturally have this notion of free speech as a right here.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
That's one thing. The First Amendment is something that I love the most about living in America. Obviously, we have it where you can't commit threats. That would be seen as illegal. But outside of threatening someone, you can say, and people use the trope of you can't yell fire in a theater.
Yeah.
You can yell fire in a theater if there's a fire.
Yeah. But I understand the point. I mean, we had it recently. There's a famous case of, we had these riots here in the UK. There was a guy who went and stabbed a bunch of girls in a Taylor Swift dance class.
Yeah.
Killed a few. And then we had riots because people got sick of a bunch of issues that kind of boiled up. And there was one woman who tweeted something along the lines, kind of, you'll probably find it, go and set fire to the hotel they're in, burn them all down. So I think she got 3.5 years in prison for it. And so we will prosecute for incitement to violence.
Yeah.
But you can prosecute civilly for libel. And it's a lot easier here than, say, in the US. I know you can do it in the US, but it's very hard. The bar's a lot higher. But there's a lot of things you just cannot say here.
Yeah.
And it's a problem.
Especially when you're a public figure, you basically can't do anything. So someone can say whatever they want about me.
That's not exactly right. Like, I can say what the fuck I want. I don't care because I just don't care because I'm independent. I can do what I want. My biggest risk is pissing off a sponsor. But if you're a footballer, I mean, we call it, soccer here.
Yeah.
The professional football players, they all sound the same now. They don't want to say anything out of the norm. They don't want to annoy people. There's like the odd random case. Like there's this Northern Irish guy, footballer, and when it comes around to November, we have Poppy Day, which is to commemorate people in the war. Yeah. Every footballer wears a poppy on the shirt. He refused to because he's Northern Irish and and he doesn't want to celebrate the British Army because of the history of the violence during the Troubles. So he refuses to wear it, and he gets endless pressure and people yelling at him. So when you step out of the norm, you get so much pressure.
Yeah.
So much pressure. It's a problem. Did you find that, by the way?
Yeah.
What did she tweet?
On that, there's another one, the Ipswich captain who doesn't wear the pride armband.
Oh, yeah, we'll come back to that. It's a mass deportation now. Set fire to all the fucking hotels full of the bastards for all I care. While you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them. I feel physically sick knowing what these families will now have to endure. If it makes me a racist, so be it. So, like, I think she's in a moment of anger tweeted that.
Yeah.
Not really thought it through. The crime is set fire to all the hotels full of the bastards. 2 years and 7 months in prison. I think that's a lot.
Yeah.
I think she's, if you're a free speech absolutist, you got to put up with this. If your bar's slightly lower, where you're like, look, incitement to violence is bad, just say something. Because there were incidents of people like pushing bins up against the hotels on fire.
They did set fire.
They did set fire. So, like, I still think the person setting bin to the fire is responsible for their decision to do that. And I'm not sure on this one. I'm really not sure on this one.
I guess
I don't think she should be in prison for 2 years and 7 months.
It seems like a long time.
Yeah.
It seems like a long time. And I guess they would have to show that those bins that were...
No. Just the incitement itself is enough here.
No, I completely understand that. I'm trying to think in my idealistic way. Like if I'm king of a country, would I say that she's responsible for the bins being put up and someone actually trying to do it? Or does someone independently have this idea and she happened to say the same thing?
Well, there is that. But also if somebody reads that and then goes and sets fire to a hotel, well, they're a fucking idiot. They're the ones who did it. Right. It's like, I find it similar to blaming Quentin Tarantino for people committing crimes.
That is true.
And so that's why I struggle with this, because if we can defend Quentin Tarantino for making art and doing this, can we defend a tweet? And I've never fully got my full position on this, but I don't think we're serving the country well or serving her well by giving her that kind of sentence, because that's destructive to her life and the consequences afterwards. And then I also think it's a waste of money. Is there something else we can do? And there'll be people listening who will comment or give their views on this, but I've never fully established my actual position here. What I will say, when you set the bar lower, I just think we need protection of speech here. We just don't have it.
Yeah. Listen, and this particular scenario is a small, rare circumstance.
You think it is? 3,400 arrested in the UK? Or
no, I'm saying like as far as...
Oh.
Actually, like she did kind of sort of incite violence, right? Or at least you can understand where they're trying to give that perspective.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But most people are just saying, I don't like this. I don't like the mass deportations. Or I don't like, having illegals here. They're giving basic opinions.
Yeah, and there were other ones. There was the one girl who was, I think she got a custodial sentence for filming people protesting and setting fire to something or another. And you can hear what they're saying in the video. So publishing a video of it. Can you find that one? I think she was a nurse.
Do you know what it feels like to me? You know when growing up you went, if your mate puts his hand in a fire, would you do it?
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
If your mate told you to jump off a cliff, would you do it? No.
But when is the incitement actually inciting action?
Yeah.
Or the risk of inciting action? And I really struggle with this one, because I want to be a free speech absolutist and I want people to be responsible for their own actions.
Right.
But then if I coerce someone, if I say to someone over and over again, going, you need to go and do that, you need to go and do this, you need to go and stab that guy. Like, is that incitement? Well, yeah, it clearly is. So
that reminds me of January 6th.
Yeah.
Basically the crime that everyone, outside of the people who are actually doing something, like if they broke a window or something like that, they were trying to get everyone, including Donald Trump, on incitement of violence. But I've yet to really hear where exactly did Donald Trump incite violence? Because I heard the opposite when he was actually on stage that day. So is it by having an event there in general somehow incite violence? But they did get people who were on the ground for inciting violence,
This is the one. Care worker jailed after live streaming armed group following Southport riot. A care worker has been jailed after being caught making racist comments on a TikTok live stream during the summer riots in Tamworth. Cameron Burrows, 23 years old, was caught on CCTV wearing a work uniform with around 20 people making their way through Tamworth town centre armed with planks of wood and metal on the night. But was heard swearing while referring to asylum seekers as tramps, but admitted to violent disorder and stepped down and been in custody ever since. Lawyer Stephen Raj told the court that she was on the periphery of a non-confrontational group. Passing sentence, John Edwards rejected a community order and told Bell that members of the group, which was caught on CCTV near the statue of Sir Robert Peel, was armed and plainly intent on further violence. Yes, but they had her on live streaming and saying something racist, and then she's been imprisoned.
But are they saying that her saying tramps is racist? Is that what they're trying to say?
They are saying that is. Yeah. But then the problem we have in the UK, we talk about this two-tier system. So Keir Starmer, we call him two-tier Keir, because then you have Hugh Edwards. Hugh Edwards was a BBC TV television presenter, news guy. It's been around for decades. He was one of the most popular people in the UK. Evans given suspended jail term for abuse images. So he's basically they found out on his phone that I think originally started, he was like communicating with somebody underage, and they checked his phone and they found his phone was full of like abusive images, like the worst, most disgusting shit of children. He gets a suspended sentence. Now, when I start to compare them, I start to think, hold on, who would I rather have in prison? Somebody says some stupid shit on Twitter, or a literal paedophile? Right. And I think I want the pedo in jail. And so this is where I struggle with it, because I'm like, there's an imbalance here. But was he given a suspended sentence because of who he was? It starts to get a bit weird.
Yeah. I keep forgetting you guys have outlawed racism.
We've outlawed racism, homophobia, I think maybe transphobia, all these things, because we have hate speech laws.
Yeah.
Which I've discussed with various people. Some people say, no, it's a good thing. And I was like, no, it's not a good thing, because natural open debate about certain issues you want to have could be argued to cross the line of hate speech, and therefore you are killing debate. Let society deal with the racists. Like, we know who the racists are. Let society reject them.
Right.
Don't put someone in prison for it.
And also that doesn't stop them from being racist.
No, it doesn't.
It might make them more racist.
Yeah. I mean, look, yeah. But the importance of free speech is something you talk about quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to really defend that in the US, but when you see the UK, do you look at things, we're crazy people? So on this podcast, you are definitely hearing me talk about Bitcoin a lot. Well, why? We live in a really strange time with governments driving inflation with their reckless spending and endless money printing. There is a way out of this. There is a way to protect your money, and that is by stacking Bitcoin. I've made loads of shows about Bitcoin. You can go and research this. You can go and read the books. But the truth is, it is the hardest money ever created. If you are interested in protecting your financial future, it's time for you to get on the Bitcoin train. I've been stacking Bitcoin personally and through my businesses since 2017. It's protected me, it's secured my family's future, and it also strengthens all of my businesses. So if you want to start stacking Bitcoin, where do you do it? Well, for me, it's with Gemini. They're a fully licensed, full reserve exchange and custodian, so they give you a secure way for you to buy and own your Bitcoin. There's no risks and no funny business. So if you're serious about stacking Bitcoin the right way, head over to Gemini.com, which is GEMINI.com.
I think that, I don't know if it's see, part of me struggles to understand, is it the people or is it a class issue? Who are the people who are dictating certain things? Is it just socially acceptable? People are like, okay, well, they said something racist, and it's okay, they lock them up. Or is it like most people don't agree with that, but they're not the ones who are in charge? But I do see like a creeping big brother element. Actually, I was just talking to someone about, it was a Keir Starmer he wants to have some sort of like AI in stadiums to hear any sort of racist things stated.
What? Yeah, well, we have that problem. There's a lot of racism in stadiums. There's been this big campaign over the years called Kick It Out, which is trying to get racism out of football. Like, we historically have had a problem.
Yeah.
Certainly of the far right being involved in, like, supporting teams, following teams, being racist. That is a thing. We get it in stadiums. You hear all kinds of... I mean, our sports are very different from your sports.
Yeah.
We separate the crowds. They sing songs at each other, and sometimes they try and fight each other.
Right.
We went to a small game the other day, and it looked like there was going to be a big fight. It is full on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shit that is said. Also, a lot of players suffer abuse post games on like Instagram and Twitter and stuff, especially black players. Like if a black player misses a penalty or gets sent off, it costs them the game. Almost certainly they're going to get a load of abuse, and it'll be racist abuse.
Yeah.
That does happen. At the same time, this sounds dystopian as fuck.
Yeah. And that was Bukayo Saka, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's just one of many.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, because that was for the Euros versus Italy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You're right on that. He did get a lot of abuse.
From my understanding, because they kept saying online abuse, most of the online abuse was coming from the Middle East and India.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't coming from England. When they were like actually identifying like where these statements were being made. But not to say like no one in England has ever said anything racist towards anyone. But to me, it's a bit dystopian.
Of course.
Because in the United States, if that was to happen, someone would hear it and they're like, this guy's an asshole. And we would say like, at this stadium, you got to get out and you're banned.
Yeah.
Right? But they're just banned, right? So we recognize, like, in my house, you can't do those things, essentially. But we don't need the government to come in and arrest you and prosecute you and things of that nature. Like, we wouldn't want to either. We wouldn't want to outlaw. We want to shame them socially. Fine, shame them. You do just about anything else. But we don't have this motivation to lock up racists. Was it the... I forgot the name of the organization because they're not principled whatsoever. But there was an organization, was it back in the 20s? I keep messing this up. Maybe the 30s or 40s or something like that. They defended the right for the KKK to march. Actually, I might be messing the timeline.
That was what Anne Widdecombe was talking about us yesterday as well. Like, she was talking about, if you as vile as they am, you shouldn't ban groups from...
Right.
Let them show their colors. Let them expose themselves. She said we had communists, we had Nazis marching on the streets. She said let them do it. Let them expose themselves. Don't ban this because it just goes underground.
Right.
Let the society deal with it.
Right.
Like, we all know racism is not acceptable. We as a society reject it. If you're in my football club and you're racist, you're gone. If you pick on a trans person, you're gone. We're not going to have any bullying or discrimination, treat people like shit. But I don't want to have AI in the stands to listen to it. I don't want to live in a, this kind of dystopian future world where like everything I say or think might be measured or I might be arrested, because that's weird.
It's very weird. And also, who gets to determine what's racist and what isn't, or what's transphobic and what isn't? And that to me is the crux of all of this. Who is making the decision? Because in content, like I had a group of friends where we would call each other fat, right? Would that be considered fatphobic? Or we're just poking fun at each other? I had a group of friends where we would call each other racial slurs and laugh. Would AI pick up on that and saying we're being racist? Like, we're messing around. Does it understand context? Or is AI super sensitive? Or is it very lenient? Like, everyone's feeling as to what is racist and what is not racist, or what's transphobic or fatphobic. Like, it's a sliding scale depending on the person. For me, I'm less sensitive to a lot of stuff, and I could take it on the chin. For other people, they're very sensitive.
Do you know Zuby?
Yeah.
Yeah. You seen him while you're here? I don't even know he's here at the moment, actually.
No, I think he's in Dubai now or something like that. But I've been on his podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he said something brilliant once. I always remember. He said the demand for racism far outstrips the supply.
Right. That's exactly it. And this is why media propaganda is incredibly effective. It's because when you get someone who tells you over and over that it's abundant, and then they're trying to have you look for a problem that isn't there. So when the problem isn't there, then they're just going to create things. It's like DEI in corporations.
Mm-hmm.
DEI in corporations was meant to make sure that we equalize things and get rid of the racism that exists in a corporation. Well, what if there isn't? Well, we have to create a hostile environment where we can find racism, right? Or decipher coded language. And in this email, you said black. Yes, because I was referring to the color of something. I wasn't talking about people. Well, just make sure you're careful next time because some people saw that. It just becomes this nanny state of everything, but trying to discover something so they can appear useful.
I don't even know what the culturally acceptable term is now to refer to a black person.
I say black.
You say black, but somebody says
black.
you can't say that. You can't say that. You have to say, I don't know, African American or what.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know anymore. It's like and it's not just with that. It's with all issues. It's like there's this like you have to carefully tread. I mean no harm when I talk.
Right.
And if I make a mistake, I don't want to get cancelled. I made a mistake. But there's that demand to get all your words right all the time. That's kind of perfection. And that's where I sometimes feel for the politicians. Well, not for the politicians themselves, because most of them are assholes. But the people who want to become politicians, it's that threat. It's like, you have had this successful career. You want to come in. You want to do good for your community. But like, you're going to have the media intrusion. Every word you say is going to be analyzed. Mm-hmm. If you say something wrong, they're going to try and come after you and cancel you. Like, I often slag off the mainstream media, and I know you do. You're very critical of it as well. Mm-hmm. But also, social media has created an army of like tiny little campaigners.
Yes.
And I was like, how do we get away from this? How do we get away from a society where we're always like we're looking for someone's mistakes, not to celebrate them. Like, I'm sure you've got hundreds of things we can celebrate. I mean, you're a successful author, speaker. Let's celebrate that. But like, there will be people out there, they're looking for that one word you said that's wrong or that one sentence, and they want to finish you. And I was like, how do we get away from that?
Well, my strategy has always been, I just don't care.
Yeah, I know. we need to create an army of people who just don't give a shit. Like,
actually, part of what I realized is that part of cancel culture is about the fear of being canceled and less about actually being canceled. The likeliness that someone will be, like, we're showing these are the horror stories, like the woman who made that tweet.
Yeah.
But that's extremely unlikely for that to happen, like in the grand scheme of people who say reckless shit on the internet, right? But back in like 2020, you said common sense stuff, and there were certain people who they were going after. But they were made as examples, right? But they weren't the norm. So the examples become the reason why everyone should shut up. Right? Because you're like, if that can happen to them, it can happen to me. I'm not going to say anything. And so then everyone takes this self-censorship position. It's a weak position, and they're scared. But the fear is greater than the likeliness of them getting canceled. So when I wrote my first book, my background's in IT manager. It was a normal job. Everything was fine, but I wanted to write a book, and I wanted to write about race. And it was against certain narratives that are now supposed to be normal. And so I didn't know if my job would like it. I didn't know if my friends will no longer be my friends. I didn't know if I'll be ostracized. I didn't know anything. I didn't know if I'll be canceled. Didn't know anything like that. But it took me 9 months of writing it before I published it, self-published it. And I convinced myself, it doesn't matter. The need to say how I actually feel outweighs me losing my job. I'll find another job.
It worked out okay anyway. It
worked out in the complete inverse. The owner of the company, he's a big Trump supporter. He's like, give me 5 books. I got a lot of love. I got a lot of support. But to go even further, I switched jobs, right? I don't tell them about the book or anything. I'm like, that's my business. I'm here to do my IT work. I decided to move more towards full-time doing this type of thing. I let them know, and they're like, shoot, we had no idea. So much so that for some time, they were like, why don't you work part-time instead of quitting? He's like, we support you. Now, this is a company that had DEI. They had, people got pronouns in their bios and stuff like that. And they were still like, oh, that's great. We support you. This is cool. What can we do to help? So it's that kind of thing where I'm like, the fear of being canceled and people not supporting you and coming after you, that is how they actually control people.
I think it's a minority of people, though.
Yeah.
Because I think I firmly believe that people are looking for a release valve now.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that. So I don't know if you know the background of this podcast. For like 7-8 years, it was just a Bitcoin podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we talked about. And then we moved on from that. And in the last 6 months since I've been doing it, it's been really intriguing to see the people who like the show because in like my community and friends, I've got my daughters, some of their parents. There was a girl who played for my girls' team, her mum. She's like, my mum listens to your show all the time. Like, these are people I wouldn't have thought would listen to this show because we have some pretty wild people on sometimes, saying some pretty wild things. But I think we've become like, it's happened with Hollywood, it's happened with the music industry, it's happened with news. Everything's become so sanitized that like we're not really reflecting real life.
Right.
You know, we're probably not reflecting the WhatsApp groups that you're in with your buddies where you're all ripping the shit out of each other. It's all become like so sanitized and don't offend that person and don't say this bad one and believe this and support that. I think it's like a pressure cooker building up. And I think Trump is part of that. I think all of this is like people feel kind of trapped.
Yeah. They did, and I'll give you, without naming a company, I'll give you an example. You saw corporate America, especially like the Fortune 500 companies, they all touting DEI and all these things. I went on Fox Business, I think it was 2023, because I wrote an article for the New York Post talking about DEI, and I was saying that, yeah, this is going to last. And I was saying that for various reasons. One, DEI makes no money. Actually, it takes in a ton of money. There was no real demand for DEI in the first place. It was done by force. It's a trend. So trends, if they come on fast, they die fast too. And so there's nothing really sustainable. And especially if we're entering an economic downturn, which we've been entering an economic downturn, are you going to fire the salespeople or are you going to get rid of DEI? I don't know. It sounds like an easy choice. So we saw that with Facebook. Obviously, Elon went into Twitter, got rid of I feel everything. Like everybody, essentially. Got rid of everybody, right? But even with Facebook, the biggest people they got rid of are the diversity people because it doesn't make any money and they got big salaries and it just made no financial sense in a private sector that relies off of actually making money, right? And profits. So there's one particular company I'm thinking of where just prior to Trump winning, DEI, all about it. Trump wins, DEI becomes poison. Everyone is gone. Like roaches, just scattered. And it's not because, Trump is in office, we can't have, you can have DEI if you want to. They were waiting for a moment. Trust and believe that the board is sitting there like, we're looking at the budget every single time. Why does DEI have twice the budget of these other departments? It doesn't make any sense. Get rid of it. Right, but like, I'm a white man. I can't get rid of that. Like, it's like, no, you're like stuck in this spot. And then here comes Saint Donald Trump to come in and save thank God. We can blame him. In the Trump era, we can't have this. So boom, goodbye. Now we got our budgets back. Now we can start to move forward. So Trump was just the excuse. But trust me, they were waiting for that moment where they could cut it right off. Because when they were like, Trump is getting rid of DEI in the federal government, what does that have to do with private industry? Nothing. You can have DEI if you wanted to, but they stopped believing in it a long time ago.
But they didn't make any money.
It wasn't making it. It actually kills their budgets.
Yeah.
Like I've just heard from too many people where they're like, it has twice or three times the budget of legit departments. It doesn't make any sense. What do? It's like the Office Space. What do you do?
What are you going to do with your LinkedIn profile if you were your entire CV is DEI officer, DEI director? You
got to change the word from diversity to something else. Like you have to use another buzzword, which I've actually heard people doing.
But all the grifts are dying now.
Yeah.
Like I think we're getting back to a common sense world where all the bullshit's dying. Like, people are sick of this. We've got independent media who say no to this shit. The legacy media's dying. So I don't know.
But I will say one thing about independent media. What worries me about independent media is that they're doing some of the same things that they complained about.
Do you know why?
Because they don't have the corporate backing. So what I would say is this, like, we'll use CNN or MSNBC, right? They're all supported by big pharma, all massive corporations, right?
Yep.
Even though no one's watching them, right? They at least have the corporate backing. So that's how they're getting their money. So they can keep their professional studios going, high budgets, things like that. So they have that element. Independent media does not have that. So what they end up doing is trying to get as much money as they can by scrounging every little thing that they do. So they end up doing clickbait.
I'm going to show you up close.
Yeah.
Con, can you get up YouTube, the thing we were talking about this morning? Okay, so audience capture is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
You play the algorithms, right? This is a very conservative show. I have a lot of conservative people on, but I'm happy to talk to the left. I mean, we've tried to get Labour politicians on. We've got one so far. We try to talk to people from the left. We want to. Whether I agree or disagree, I want to hear what you say. Is this so? So can you go to where we actually see the stats? If you got okay, but anyway, I'll show you on my phone quick.
You logged me out when you changed my name.
I'll get you back in. Right. So listen, our shows will range on YouTube. Anything from the lowest is like 4 or 5K up to 500,000. Right. I'm going to show you this. So here's some standard shows. I don't know. 41,000, 141, 7,000, 1330, 5230, yada yada. But there was one recently where it was a guy, he'd never done a podcast. I think he'd done one podcast before. And it did 116,000. I mean, we would have thought, what, would have done 15? Okay. But when you go down to the YouTube algorithm, like what's actually happening, what they're tracking. So that's the gray's the normal performance. That's his performance. He's up for. But if you go here, this is audience retention. See the pink line?
Yeah.
That's his line, which is above the gray. Now, YouTube's business model, the more time you're watching, the more ads you see, and the more money they're making. Okay, so we've got quite a conservative audience. This week, I get a guy on who is a philosopher, who is a campaigner for environmental issues and climate change, right? Climate change, some of the scientists, their ideas have been debunked. I think it's an open debate still at the moment, but it's so ideological that if you're if you've lost all your trust in institutions, you think that climate change issues are a big grift. I get that.
Right.
But there are people out there who believe climate change is real and is caused by humans. There's two sets of groups. I just want to talk to him. Right. Look at this. So it's completely underperformed the normal range. If you go down to here, look at the drop off. They came in, bosh. It's way below. So YouTube just stops showing it to people. So me, if I'm a greedy motherfucker, what am I doing? I know conservative opinions that kind of rage bait people and draw them in. They're going to make me money.
Right.
Because you go here, and if we go to the analytics, this is where I get paid from YouTube. I get paid from the shows performing, the ads performing.
Right.
You know, I mean, this isn't our main source, but, you know, we've £20,000 over the last few months. So I am incentivized to produce exactly what my audience wants to hear and make them angry and keep them on. I'm disincentivized for having opposing opinions. Now, look, some people listen and go, no, he wasn't a good opposing opinion. Truth is, he said things they didn't want to hear, that climate change is real, okay? That he's anti-nuclear, blah, blah, blah. Typical set of opinions you'd expect from somebody in that area.
Right.
I still want to talk to him. I still want to hear him. And so that's the trap. And it's the exact same trap that mainstream media has.
Correct.
It is the economics. That's why you celebrate someone like Rogan, because he's never given a shit about the money. He just built the great show.
Right.
But a lot of the independents aren't doing that. They're getting sucked into this because they see the dollar signs. They want the money.
Yeah.
And it's a real problem.
It definitely is. And there's a saturation issue as well. Everyone has a podcast. So there's only so much time. There's only so much of an audience. Although I think the audience of podcast listeners is steadily growing. But there's a lot of it. The market is saturated with different voices and ideas and platforms and things of that nature. So I think it almost in some ways becomes a race to the bottom for some people.
Yeah, but the cream will come to the top. That you will have, the authentic good people that people go, oh look, I trust that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not trying to grift me. They're not ideological. They're just they're curious. They're interested. They're trying to find stuff. Like I would say to anyone, Rogan's our Michael Jordan in this. Like a young kid playing basketball, they look at Michael Jordan. I want to be like Michael Jordan. Okay, Rogan's our Michael Jordan. He has, you can agree with him, disagree with him, but he's done it authentically. You know, even if I disagree, I think he believes that. And if when he asks a question, he's asking because he's curious, and that's. I think that he's created the blueprint to do it, but that requires years of effort. Whereas YouTube saying to you, no, if you do this now, you're going to make more money. It's really difficult for the independents because they need, like you said, they're always scrounging, asking, hustling for money.
Yeah.
So I think that comes down to the character of the podcaster.
Oh yeah, for sure. The character matters. There are definitely things that I could have done to make more money that I chose not to because I want to sleep at night. That's been like my number one rule. I do think that what I'm worried about is people are looking towards independent media to fulfill the gap of being truth tellers, to be honest, more honest than the mainstream media. What I'm worried about is that, I'll use the Daily Wire, for example. If you go to Daily Wire, it's a conservative viewpoint. That's honest, right? And they do certain things to make sure that they have some sort of integrity. But not everybody has, and Daily Wire has done very well for themselves. So they have the economic means to do things in a very particular way. But not everybody does. There are smaller outlets that are unable to do those things. And they have to do the clickbaity, the ads all over the website. They have to do all of these things to try to survive. And it's difficult to survive. And it's almost like the kid who comes from a rough neighborhood. I can go to school every day. I could do the right thing, get into college, or I could sell some drugs. And you see the people start selling drugs, start selling conspiracies, start selling all this nonsense, recirculating 3-4-year-old videos of something happening to piss you off and make you angry and click here. It just becomes like the Wild West of independent media. And I'm worried that it's going to turn off people from the independent media.
Well, I think there's an education job to do with the audience.
Yeah.
I interviewed a guy, Eric Weinstein, you probably know him. Yeah. And he said to me, do you ever piss off your audience? I said, well, try not to. He said, well, let's piss them off now. Let's try and lose you 10% of your audience because it's better for your long-term growth. Tell them something they don't want to hear. Right. Like if you believe it, but tell them it's something you don't want to hear. When I put that show out, I got an email from a guy straight away. It's like, I've been following your podcast for years. I can't believe you had this guy on. You're disgusting. I'm never listening to your show again. I'm like, okay, cool. See you later. Like, fine. If you're getting so worked up by one interview and I've done 1,000 and you're now leaving me, you're actually part of the problem. You're trying to coerce me not to speak to people. My recommendation to you, buddy, is go and listen to some alternative viewpoints. You probably keep listening to people who tell you stuff you already believe and already know and get them wound up. Just go and see what the other side is saying. Even if you disagree with them, you might become better at debating them about why you're right. But just go, like, I want people to listen to people they disagree with empathetically and calmly and see, one, they might be wrong. 2, can their opinion be changed? Or 3, if they think the other person's wrong, how they debate them. But I think we need to spend a lot more time out of our echo chambers with the people we disagree with. But people don't want to do that.
Well, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, like the softening of our society.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Of course you would listen to people that you don't agree with. Like there are people in your family you don't agree with.
Yeah.
And you still love them. You still care about them. And that's a shame where like me writing my book, I'm worried like, is my family going to disown me because I have a moderately different opinion, right? I didn't become a neo-Nazi or something. Like I just don't agree with this narrative. And of course, my family embraced me and they were proud of me. Even if they don't agree with me, they like to say sometimes, I don't always agree with you, but I love you.
Yeah, I know that saying. I get that with my family. I'm the wild one in it as well.
Yeah. But it's a softening that I'm seeing because you shouldn't have to say that. Either I like you or I don't like you. I've interviewed people who, they have more extreme viewpoints than I do, right? They go farther to the right than I do. But there's something about them that I like, and I want to hear what they think, right? And I'm not trying to debate you. I just want to hear what you think.
Well, I think a hardening is coming back. I think there's this course correction now that we did go too soft. It created all these problems. I think people are sick of it. I think conservatism's becoming popular again.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have become a bit more base. They're not wanting to cancel people. I think the hardening is coming back, and I'm here for it, man.
I am too. I am worried, and we're seeing some of this online. I am a bit worried about, there's always like an equal and opposite reaction.
The woke right.
Yes. Where you can't say these things, and now it's like, not only am I going to say these things, I'm going to say it loud and proud.
The wildest shit.
The wildest stuff, right? So it's going to the extreme when we're trying to just get back to a normal point where we were at before, where you should be bothered if someone calls you racist, right? Because being a racist isn't a good thing.
Got to be the dick.
But now it's gotten to the point where the political left has overused it, overemphasized it, and so much so that it watered it down. And now certain people take pride in being called racist because if I'm the racist, at least I'm not like them, right? They're my clear opposition.
Oh,
so it's just taken like this weird form and obviously this is not majority of people. It's a sliver of an audience that exists. But I don't want people. I want people to be principled. I don't want people to react off of they're my enemy, so I'm going to do the opposite thing of them. Because at the end of the day, what will happen is they're going to meet.
Yeah.
And they're going to do...
It's a horseshoe, man.
Right, it's a horseshoe. That's the whole thing with the woke right term that I think is hilarious, where people are denying.
Because what an attack on your character. You, for the last fucking 8 years, have been attacking the woke left. You've been calling them woke. Then suddenly, there are people coming back to you calling you woke. And it's not the left.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it's people who are on your side. It's people like well-principled, meaningful conservatives that turn around to you and go, oh, by the way, you're just like them. You're woke right now.
Right.
Who could be class woke right is going to go, yeah, I admit that. I think it's way worse for a conservative to be branded woke right than a progressive liberal to be branded woke.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ultimate attack on your character because you've used that slur against them.
Right.
And that's why they're all denying it. But it's right, they exist.
Yeah, and they're upset about it. And they for many of them, and who's woke right, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I don't name names or anything like that. But what I'm saying is if you told me that over the past 4 or 5 years, that if someone says the wrong thing, that they should automatically lose their job, they should be ostracized, and you would call that woke, right? If you have all these lists of characteristics that you said were obviously bad, censoring people is bad, right? We should have free speech. Censorship is bad. And then you start advocating for censorship and saying that, well, not free speech for everybody. You're doing the exact same thing that you were criticizing them for doing. So, I mean, I don't need to be a scholar. I don't need to, read a ton of books. I could just look at very clear patterns here that I'm one of those people who've been criticizing, like, hey, we shouldn't have race realism or race essentialism, actually, right? Where we say, actually what we talked about earlier, because this person is black, I should infer all of these things about this person. In the same way, we shouldn't do that for white people. Just because this person is white, we shouldn't infer all these things. But now we're seeing that coming from the woke right. And I'm just like, you guys are doing the exact same thing, and it's not principled. It's in reaction. It's you being frustrated, right? Because there is a legitimate gripe when it came to over the past 4 years where white men were the enemy, right? But they were the enemy of the woke left, this tiny group of people, right? And while that is not fair and that's not nice, it's this many people who were saying these things. And maybe in some circumstances in corporations, they were discriminating against white men and favoring someone like myself. But that's not every company. Not all these guys. Trust and believe, These guys who are complaining, I would bet you anything, they were not personally affected by these things. But let's say they were. Those are bad things, but it does not mean that the inverse is automatically good, where you should now start to get favorability. Like this, it's a tit for tat kind of thing. And I'm saying that we should be principled. The civil rights movement, I'll go back to saying the civil rights movement wasn't about don't oppress Black people. It was about do not use the government, do not use the state to oppress people based off of characteristics they have no control over. So whether they are Black, whether they're white, male, female, the list goes on. That was the lesson. That's equality. All right. The left was wrong when they did it. The right is wrong if they try to do the same thing. So I'm not too worried about them becoming like the woke right, becoming the prevalent voice of all these things. But I understand where people are calling it out. And I do think that self-correction is important. You know, in your own house, if your child is messing up, you're going to call them out on it, right? Because you care about them, not because you want to rub their nose into it. And so if people who are on the right are concerned that things are going a bit extreme, that's because they care. And they don't want to get lumped into this thing either. Because if one day it does happen where the next presidential candidate starts saying some wild woke right shit, guess what I'm doing?
Yeah, I know what you're doing.
Hey, Democrats.
I'm back.
I guess I got to hear you guys out more often now, because they've become radical now too. See, the Democrats have become radical leftists. That's why I left the Democratic Party. While I'm an independent, I listen to mostly Republicans, and I try to hear them out and hear what they have to say and try to balance between the two. But if we're going to play this game of going back and forth where one party becomes very radical with race topics, with just all these very extreme viewpoints, then I guess I'm saying independent forever. And I just have to play it by ear and see who's lying to me, who's being exaggerative, who's being ideological. But trust and believe that it's forming into an ideology of its own. But yeah, man, we'll see.
Well, listen, Adam, great to meet you. The book is The Children We Left Behind. Check it out, people. I love this conversation. It's great to meet you, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah.
You stay in touch. Good luck with everything. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you soon.